So welcome to today's call. Today, as this is kind of building on the last conversation, where we're going to go a little bit deeper into, there are many tools, as we've spoken about, that can be used. And today we're probably going to, we are going to go more into some of the somatic questions, some of the compassionate inquiry. There's always a lot to cover. And I think we speak quite in depth about this in the podcast we did yesterday. I've forgotten what episode already.
Number 9.
Number 9. So if we maybe put a link to that, because I actually think rather than me repeat myself, I think we both did a really good job yesterday of explaining our approach and going top down or, bottom up, and finding the root, as well as sometimes kind of finding the root cause, but also sometimes what to do if you can't find the root cause, and how you can kind of trace it back using questions, using thoughts, using journals, or sometimes you can cut straight to the root, essentially. So what we'll talk about today is some of the somatic stuff that I've personally found to be quite useful, and I've also used with clients, and teaching this in a way in which you can use this yourself, right? Obviously you can have, for example, you could work with one of us too. We could take you through the processes, but a large point behind all of this stuff is almost teaching you how to help yourself, how to regulate yourself, how to, use these different tools, find what works for you, use different tools in different times, and then you're essentially armed with a mental toolbox, more kind of a mental, emotional, spiritual, physical toolbox, so you can do this with yourself. So a lot of my healing has come from, obviously I've had therapy, I still have therapy, I've had coaching, I've had loads of coaching. Chris and I have obviously coached each other many times. We've been to coaching intensive, stuff like that. But coaching has also taken the form of watching trainings like this, reading books, working on myself. I think self-coaching has been a massive part for me. So that's why I'm quite passionate about sharing the tools and stuff that work. So do you have anything to add to that before I dive in?
No, not really. I kind of want this to be like, I think it'd be good to have a practical session. We've sort of taught a lot of information the last 2 sessions. So this is very likely to be a shorter but more practical session. But I think one thing to say before you get into it is just and give yourself the time and the space to actually work through the questions that James is about to take you through. Even if you do it in real time, close your eyes, process the questions. Because I think sometimes you can come at this from 2 different angles. You can come at it from a place of learning and, oh, wow, these are really good. And I'm sort of updating my knowledge, which might be useful for some of you, because I know some of you in here are already coaches and you're already in the sort of, in the sphere of helping others. So, I used to listen through 2 lenses. One was, how can I actually apply this in my own coaching practice? So, if I was listening as you are now, I'd be listening to James thinking, actually, this is really useful. Like, I could see how this could be quite useful for this client or that client or this client. So I'd be picking up tools and acquiring tools to help other people with. But I think one thing to remember that the second lens is to focus on yourself, So for example, for me, I very rarely actually use any of this stuff unless I've actually done it on myself, because I think that you're able to deliver it with much more power, certainty, knowingness when you've actually done this work, because you can share the insights, the knowledge, the crumbs of wisdom that come through doing the work on yourself. So I think just doesn't matter which one you're coming through today in terms of which lens you're looking through, but just if you're just listening for knowledge, fine, but I would highly recommend actually doing this work as well. So that, like if you're listening on the whim today because you wanted to catch up with a session, great, amazing. But I recommend going back to it later today, tomorrow, another day, when you can actually sit down and really be present with the questions and do them. I think that's quite important before we dive into this.
Yeah. I think if anyone is doing this work for themselves, awesome. If anyone's doing it to help others, I think naturally we help others anyway, because everything I learn, I would then go and teach to anything I learn. I will then go tell Naylor about. I'm going to learn something today, and then I used to talk to my ex-wife about, and I would try things on her and see what come up, and I would then sometimes it was even useful with the kids. I would teach some of this stuff I'm about to take you through. I actually did with the kids. Rosie, who is 9 now, used to have be quite angry, and I'd learn some stuff. I'm like, let me see if it works on her, and I'd adapt it a little bit. And then once I was like, oh my God, this is not only awesome for me, it's awesome for everyone. I would then take it to clients and see what experience I would get from it. But once you've got a deep, it's difficult to explain what an insight is until you've had one. It's difficult to explain how good it feels. Like, imagine if an alien come to Earth and they were like, well, how do you feel after you've cried? Like, if you'd never cried, you're like, I don't know. Whereas if you've had a really good cry and afterwards you felt lighter, you then know. You could say to the alien, look, try it, right? If you're stressed, let's sit here and sob together. That's a weird example, but it's like, the more you understand yourself and these experiences, I think the more you can kind of help others. And the point of all of this stuff is it just brings us home to ourselves. I feel like underneath it is, I'm almost imagining this light. In my head, it's like a crystal ball, but it's like bright. It's like, imagine let's just call it like a bedside lamp or something, but it's like a ball. This is what's come to my mind and I'm going with it. And I feel like that's what we are, like this pure kind of light, this unfiltered, the gaps in my words almost point to it, this spaciousness, this stillness, this calmness, this tranquility. But then we just get shit over it. Imagine if you cover this light with mud and dirt, and before long, light's shining through the cracks and there's not much left, and you can kind of, then paint over the top of it to try and make it look pretty, but it's still not quite the same. And sometimes I feel like we're just clearing some of that stuff away, and then you might find sometimes you just feel pure, and sometimes there's a little bit of mud on it and you wipe that off, or you've been triggered today, so there's a little bit splattered on it, and it's fine, you process that. Sometimes, you might feel like it's just covered in crap, and that's what we're working through. But ultimately, I think what we're looking for, and what I'd invite you to look for, is that feeling when you feel lighter, when nothing's changed but everything feels different. Your mind goes quiet, or you just feel lighter for no reason at all, or things just become, your thoughts slow down. They go from to just, you might even find yourself take a deep breath or yawn or sigh. There's clues there, right? Either they're probably somatic clues, how your breathing changes. Some people are like, I feel like I can breathe deeper again. That's kind of what we're looking for. To me, they're signs that we're finding our way home. Things slowing down, things feeling quieter, things feeling more peaceful. Sometimes the very problems you thought you had before the call are gone, and you're like, oh, that's a good sign. Let's leave it there. Kind of that's what we're looking for, I think, is that feeling. Do you have anything to add to that part?
No, not really. I mean, no. I think let's dive in.
All right. So essentially,
just finishing up our coffees to get us through this session.
Yeah, and mine's a green tea, but it's a tea pig, I think.
Mine's actually love in a cup.
All right, decent. Mine is a cup that did once look nice, but now is absolutely fucking battered. Like, you can see how much I've used it. All the paint's come off the handle.
I think I remember when you got those cups. Yeah, so that's definitely been used a lot.
Yes. So much so that the handle just fell off the other day. I was left holding the handle while my coffee was all over the floor. That was cool. Anyway, so with this, I am someone, and again, if you haven't listened to the podcast, let's put that in there as well, because I think you can hear the same. You could watch this video 5 times over and hear something different. So to hear us talk about it in the podcast as well, difference that you guys get is if you're in the group, then you're going to get the actual tools. On the podcast, we're telling you after we lay all the context for it to come to the group, so you're in the right place. But as a coach, I'm going to go from there, because as a coach, you kind of learn the behind the scenes of what works. And as you learn what works for others, you learn what works for yourself, or maybe the other way around. You learn what works for yourself, so then you learn what works for others. One of the challenges sometimes as a coach is a lot of people aren't very good at it necessarily because they're in their head. So they're coach, let's say I'm coaching Naylor and I'm thinking, what do I need to say? What's the next question? Oh, there's an awkward silence. what did he just say? I wasn't really listening. I just zoned out. I don't know what to say here. How do I make this? Is he enjoying the session? Is he not? And what you have to learn to do is really just drop into that stillness and that spaciousness. And then as I would be listening to Naylor talking about his problems or his stresses or whatever, you would kind of listen for things that just didn't sound quite right. I always imagine a dog, when a dog goes, huh? And his ears go up. It's like the dog's almost like, what the fuck? What was that? What was that noise? Like, you always get that feeling where, and you might get it when you're talking to your wife or kids or husband or whoever, they say something and you think, what? Like if someone says something that you don't believe, for example, something you know is not true, something you know something about, and someone comes along with a statement and they say like, I don't know, they say something like, yeah, I just don't believe I can lose weight. You think, the fuck? Everyone can lose weight. Like that kind of thing. Or, I don't know, when someone tells you how to do your job or something and you think, oh, like, because there's almost like a little clue of, but you'll notice, the reason I'm sharing this is because you'll notice that in yourself sometimes. If you really listen to your thoughts, you can catch yourself thinking, oh, like, oh yeah, I can't do this because no one's got any money, or I'm not very good at coaching, or whatever it is for you, right? Whatever those thoughts are. If you really listen carefully, you can normally notice a little, what? Like, that doesn't sound quite right. As a coach, that's the thread you pull on. You go back to that and say, hang on a minute, you just said this, like, and you'll take it back to that point. So you do learn to become quiet, pay a lot of attention to something that just doesn't quite sound right. You're listening for truth. And by truth, I mean what is always true for all the time. So if you said to me, I keep jumping out the bedroom window and I keep splatting, and for some reason I just keep breaking bones and I can't seem to fly, it's like, well, yeah, no shit, right? Of course, that seems like a silly thing to do. But if someone says to me, I can't start my new business because no one's got any money, it's like, what? No one's got any money. No one, not one person, not one single person. Like, that's what I'm talking about here. Or if someone says, yeah, I just don't believe I can lose weight. Why? Like, so we can listen for these kind of deficiency stories anyway. So the first thing, that's what kind of laying the foundations here as to where we're going. But so the first thing is kind of, to recap where I've got to now, is we're looking for that kind of spaciousness. We're looking for that kind of stillness. We're also kind of looking for the clues in our own thoughts that something doesn't quite add up. Something's an assumption. Something's a story. Something's a belief. Something's a lie, probably. Like, we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts aren't true. But just listen for what are the thoughts you're having and notice how many of them are you buying into that are actually bullshit. If it's not 100% true 100% of the time, then it's probably not true. So we can already start to play in that. But the second reason this is important, because you could get lost in thought. It's like, oh my God, I've had this. We have is it like 80,000 thoughts a day or something? And you couldn't question all those thoughts. A lot of them aren't going to be true. Ton of them aren't going to be true. So it could get quite heavy. So sometimes as a coach, you would find these little bits of threads and you'd pull at them and that would be enough. But some people always had an answer for every question. Yeah, but, and you'd say, hang on a minute, what about this? Yeah, but, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but, and you'd be like, can I just interrupt you again? You had to kind of really come off and you'd kind of feel like they're not seeing what I want them to see. And sometimes I would then find that in myself as well. Like, yeah, but my thoughts are thinking this and this thought's turn into 10 other thoughts and I'm so lost. I don't even, when you're having a bad day and everything's a problem. Is it money? Is it my relationship? Is it I'm old? Is it some trauma from the past? Is it because I spilled my tea? Like, is it because I can't afford a new cup when it's sort of pain's coming off? Like, what is it? Like, and you can get so lost in all of it. And that's what eventually kind of led me to try and find, how do you get deeper? Like, and that's where the somatic stuff comes in. So I learned from Gabor when I did Gabor's course to separate emotion and thought, which is sometimes easier said than done, but also not. So can we get the emotions wheel up, actually?
Yes. Let me get it up.
So essentially, what we're looking at here is, what is the emotion? Is that big? Can that be bigger?
I don't know, actually. That's the point. Let me try.
Hello. I'll keep talking while she figures
Is
that
that
out.
bigger?
So, meh. I mean,
Why
I
is it like
actually
that
can't
for?
see it, but we could put a link. Ultimately, if you Google emotions will, you're not going to be far wrong, basically.
I don't
There are
understand why
different
it's...
variations of it, but the premise is the same. So what I like about this emotions wheel is sometimes I'd say to someone, so let's say we're stressing about starting a new business, or we are stressing about our relationship, or we are stressing about a work situation, or, I don't know, we're feeling a certain way and we don't even know why. The question then kind of becomes, what is the emotion? Which separates it from the story. So if you ask someone, and if you try this on your kids or your wife or your husband or whoever, right? What is the emotion? Yeah, yeah. You'll notice that they
what was
they will go to the
happening?
story. It's fine. They'll go to the story
Oh, do you know what?
essentially.
Give
So
up.
I've had enough of listening
We'll,
to
we'll,
the
we'll link it. We'll link it and they can
yeah.
check it out.
Yeah, so people go to the story. So like if I say to, I don't know, you say to your child, how are you feeling? Normally the story comes up. So it'll be, so and so Jack said to me this and he stole my ruler. Like that's the story, that's the thought, that's the story about what happened, or that's the story about why it happened, or that's not necessarily the emotion. So what I like about the emotions wheel is because it makes it really simple. We've got happy, surprised, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad. I don't think bad necessarily features on all these emotion wheels. So you'll find the core emotions change depending on the theories, but ultimately the premise is the same. So, and as that spirals out from there, you can see someone might be like, oh, I feel, I don't know, I feel jealous, which is also an emotion, but you'll see that kind of stems from mad, which stems from anger. So jealousy is a form of anger essentially. Or if we was to go over to, I don't know, let's say sad. So sad could be embarrassed, disappointed, empty, victimized, isolated, lonely, vulnerable, etc. So you can see it makes it much easier. Like when and you have to do this for yourself, right? Unless you're being coached or whatever. What is the emotion? And then just listen. Don't listen for where the answer comes from. Because if it comes from up here, you'll notice there's a lot more words. It's like, what is the emotion? And if you're like me or a lot of people, your brain will be like, well, the emotion's this and that, and that's because of this, and it's because of that. And no wonder you feel like that. And you're back in the thought content, you're back in the story. It's like, that's not an emotion. Yeah, but Naylor called me that. Yeah, but Naylor called me this is not an emotion. That's not an emotion. What's the emotion? And you have to kind of ask yourself that question. I usually close my eyes and I might journal if I want to, or I just sit there on my own. Try and bring the presence into your body. Try and slow down. I normally breathe, big deep breath. What is the emotion? And you ask yourself the question, but you wait for the answer. Don't construct the answer. Don't create the answer. Wait for the answer to drop in. And you'll normally find it doesn't have many words. It might just say sad. And that's it. And with that, you might feel sad. You might find yourself crying and you might even then start judging that. What the fuck? What's going on? Just let it flow. Let the emotion be seen. Let it be felt. Let the energy in motion, the emotion be felt, essentially. Just go with the emotion. Hold it. Surrender to it. Don't judge it. So whatever comes up, whatever that emotion is for you, wait for the emotion to come up. If it has come up, you can then pay attention to the sensations. Like, where is it? You might find a feeling in your chest or a feeling in your stomach, or if you're sad, I get like a feeling behind my eyes, like pressure behind my eyes, or, and then you feel the sensation of the tears or whatever it is. If it's anger, I might find myself already, it's like my jaw goes tight, fists kind of clench, and that noise, like that's what wants to, and you just go with that, right? You just go with what is the emotion if you can get to it. So I'll take you down a few routes so you can, and you're going to have to try this for yourself to really get an idea of it. But so you're asking yourself, what is the emotion? And if something comes up for you, so here's our first route. If something comes up for you, you can name the emotion. What is the emotion? From that place, you can feel it, right? Where is it in your body? You can watch it, you can observe it. Does it move when you watch it? I've got my eyes closed, so you can tell that's obviously part of my practice, right? Does it move? Does it want to make a sound? For me, anger wants to go, that's what it wants to do for me. It wants to, and there's even a release to doing that. Even me doing that, I get a bit of a, I feel better now. Like, I think there's probably quite a lot of anger in me. So it's like, you can act out the emotion if you want to. This is what I did with my daughter, by the way. I'd ask questions like, if you can only tell me in sound, how was your day? And things like that. Like, it's more, or like talking to her about anger. I'd say, how does it feel? And I'd try and get her to feel it in her body. And what is it? And what does it want to do? And I'd say, if it could speak, what would it say? And that's what you can ask yourself, right? If the emotion, once you've found the emotion, now this is where the roads split again. And I will come back and collect you whatever part you got lost, right? If when you're observing the emotion, it starts to dissipate, you might find that's enough. You found the emotion, you've watched it, and you might find that it's like trying to grab ice, like slips out of your hand. Like as you then start to try and think, what is the emotion? It's almost like you can't grab it anymore. What was the emotion? And you're like, no, concentrate, and it's gone. That's fine. That's as much as it needed for now, maybe forever. Almost letting it be seen and felt can be enough to process it. So if at that point you're kind of dropping it and you can't find the emotion again and you can't find the sensation, then on that particular part of our journey, you're probably done for today, which is really cool. And you might just feel better anyway. You might feel lighter and cool. That's a really beautiful experience. If it's still there and you can still feel it and you can still hold it and you've watched it and you've observed it, you can just, you're just trying to get to know it a little bit. Like, does it have a color? If it could speak, what would it say? And you have to ask yourself that question. If this could speak, what would it say? Out loud or in your head? And then just listen. Don't try and say something clever. Don't try and make it say anything. Don't get lost in your thoughts again. This is weird. This is this. Maybe it'll say that. Just bring yourself back to the spaciousness, the stillness. If it could speak, what would it say? Or what is it trying to tell me? Sometimes nothing comes up. Fine. Doesn't mean you do it wrong or right. It just is what it is, right? Sometimes words will come out of it. So when I was doing this with myself on sadness, the words that come up, which it makes me feel kind of a bit emotional now saying it, because I remember at the time it was like, you'll find they're normally really quite short sentences. They're not lengthy. The words that come up for me is, I just want to be loved. And then with that was like a real, I felt emotional. I cried a bit, as well as my mind going, what the fuck? I've never said those words before. I've never said those words before. Like that didn't come from a logical place. I don't know where that come from, but it just was surprising, as well as quite beautiful, as well as quite sad to feel. And I just allowed that. And then once those words had come out, I tried to bring myself back to it. And I found I couldn't quite grasp it anymore. It had gone. And it was like, okay, fine. So depending on what you're working on, depends on how much it seems to need to be processed. So with that, if words don't come up, fine. You can even visualize it sometimes. If what would it look like? I've had it before where, as I kind of pictured what this emotion would look like, I've had a few crazy experiences. One was like, I could picture like this angry, like troll just smashing up my whole desk. It was just fucking smashing everything up. Like the anger, if the anger could act out, that's what it was doing in my head. It was visual. It was more visual. It wasn't actually doing it. I could just picture it. And my imagination is quite vivid. So that works for me. But, you can actually act it out if you want. I've done this with the kids as well. Like if it can make a noise, you can actually make a noise, assuming no one's around you, so you don't get like sectioned. You might want to move a certain way. You might find you want to move your body. You might want to kind of clench your fist, clench your jaw. You might find you just want to breathe. You might find you want to cry, whatever it is. There's no wrong way of doing this, but you'll go down different routes depending on where it takes you. With that, going back a second, I think I've kind of not accidentally, but I've kind of covered a lot of the routes where you might split off at certain points where you just can't quite feel the emotion. Can't name the emotion. I don't know. So in which case, that's when you would go to the sensation. Can you feel anything in your body? So we'd go that way. Don't know what the emotion is, but there's a sickness in my stomach. Or I don't know what the emotion is. I just feel like my shoulders are tight. So that's what we'd focus on, right? We'd go in at the level of sensation. Like, what is the feeling in my shoulders? It's like tightness. So I could really just be present with that, be conscious of that. You know, if that could speak, what would it say? Yeah, if it could make a noise, what noise would it make? Is there a color to it? What do I think that's trying to say? And just listen for the answers, essentially. Now, if you want to kind of take it deeper in terms of more of a therapeutic approach, then you could, once you've found the emotion and you've done all of this, assuming it's still there and it hasn't dissipated, you can think about, like, is this a familiar emotion to me? So let's use anger for me, for example. Is this a familiar emotion? Yeah, I've felt it before many times. Like, fine. Then you want to, what is the earliest time that you can remember this emotion? Like, you might find things just flash up. Sometimes it's almost like flashbacks, or it's like dominoes, where it goes, duh, 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 and you can almost picture so many times that all link together. Sometimes it's things you thought you'd forgotten, or it's only in this moment you think, so for me with anger, I remember feeling, now I look back at it from an adult brain, right? Because we're going back and almost reparenting in some ways. Like, I remember feeling such anger, but I would pretend I didn't feel anything, and then I would go away and express that anger. So in this particular scenario, I think my mum was arguing with someone, which she always did, and I think there was probably a feeling of unsafety and a real build-up of anger. I think there was also sadness there, and what I would then do is I'd go into the back of the kitchen and absolutely punch the shit out, like punch holes in this door. That was my expression of anger. I don't know why that's a memory for me, but that's like the earliest, or one of, as an example, one of the many things that flash up. So essentially you can kind of normally see the root at which this kind of originated. So we're getting deeper with this now, but you can kind of see, where did this originate? And if you've got kids, this is quite easy. If you haven't, you can, just tap into your own kind of empathy and compassion, but you can kind of look back at, you can hold that young James. He was like 13 in this scenario, 12, 13, same age as my son, funnily enough. And you can think about, like, you can picture them in that scenario, or you can just see your younger self. And it's like, what was he feeling? And what did he fucking most need? In that moment, what did he most need? What did he need to say? Right? And what did he most need? Because I can tell you now, he didn't get what he needed. Like, if I was my own parent to myself at that age, it would have been a very different conversation. But again, you can do this and you can feel what emotion comes up and you can feel what comes up for you. There are visualizations and stuff we can do with this, right? We can take this further. This is kind of probably more kind of reparenting stuff. I think people call it like spiritual reparenting or reparenting. There are visualizations and stuff you can do, which is probably a little bit beyond this call, because otherwise there's just way too much here. But there are ways in which you can essentially, take yourself through a process of giving that version of yourself what you needed, which can be quite emotional depending on how you do that. But interestingly, one of the core questions that always comes out in Gabor's work is, who did you talk to? And for most people, the answer would have been no one. So it's like, where did all that emotion go? Given the fact we didn't know how to process it at that age, and we didn't have a parent to teach us or someone to talk to, usually, where did it all go? Well, it's gone somewhere, right? And then normally we can create a deficiency story out of it. We can create beliefs from it, and we can create coping mechanisms from it. Sometimes habits will form from that. I got a habit of biting all the inside of my mouth, which is still something I'm working on somatically, because that's like an obsessive like coping mechanism kind of thing. People bite their nails and shit like that. So we would have developed coping strategies. Yeah. Coping strategies or deficiency stories, like about what that means about us. Like, I'm weak for demonstrating that aggression, or I'm weak because I didn't stand up for my mum or whoever it was. These aren't true for me, but I'm just saying, like, you will find a lot of the time what's happened is in that moment we've created an assumption or a story, and then we're living out that pattern. So we're living out the pattern of not being good enough. We're living out the pattern of I'm mental or I'm weak or whatever. So you will find some deep stuff. So if you, it'd be awesome if you go through this process. I will map out. It's hard to map out the questions because they go in slightly different avenues depending on what comes up for you. But I'll do my best to put this into a follow along kind of question formula.
Almost do with like a mind map, like one of them kind of like, do you feel this? Yes, no. Yeah, if yes, go this way.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, that could work. That could work actually. So we'll do that. But if not, you can follow along with the video anyway, to be fair. You can listen to the question I've asked, you can pause it, you can be with it, you can unpause me, keep doing it, pause it again. That's what I would do, to be honest, because I prefer, that's probably what works best for me. So you can kind of do it in real time. But yes, that's the kind of more of the somatic stuff. Now, depending on you may find that you can't really locate this. I've worked with people that they can't really feel the they're not in their bodies. They can't really feel the sensations. They can't really feel the emotions. So they intellectualize a lot of stuff. I have found the majority of the people I've worked with, maybe I just resonate with those people, or somehow we're attracting those kind of people. Normally feelings are not difficult for us. We're quite emotional beings. So actually almost feeling too much. We're quite sensitive. But yeah, with that said, I think it's Eckhart Tolle, and we can kind of do this for a second. I'm holding my hand up out in front of me. Close your eyes. I think it's him that says, like, is your hand still there? Now, someone that's in their head says, yeah. And I say, well, how do you know? And they say, well, of course it is. Whereas someone that feels more, so ask yourself that question, like, your hand's in front of you, right? Your eyes are closed. Is it still there? How do you know? My answer would be, and I know, Naylor, we've spoken about this, I can feel it. I can feel almost energy. I can feel pulsing. I can feel warmth. I can feel the energy through my hands. There's a connection there. So that kind of implies that, there is, connected to my body. And I do think this is where exercise in the gym comes in a lot. You build that connection. I think that's why movement can be therapy, and there's body-based therapy and movement therapies and Tai Chi and shit like that. So, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to know what happens. How do you know your hands are still there? So let's everyone just put that in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, obviously chuck that in underneath somewhere, or in the somewhere in the group, right? Because it's just a really cool discussion. And also, if you go through these questions, let us know what come up for you. If it's quite private and you don't want to share it kind of in the group, it'd be awesome if you did, but you can just share it with us personally, privately as well. Either way, it'd be awesome to know what comes up for you, or any questions. Anything that didn't make sense.
If you want to ask questions, guys, just send me or James a message in the platform. If you want to ask privately, but if you're open, and because, we are in quite a safe container. So I think a lot of people will, I find that when people ask questions, a lot of people actually resonate with the question. They just didn't think of the question first. So actually what you can do is, by asking the question, you actually pique the interest of other people in the group. You're like, oh, shit, that's a really good question. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or they just wasn't aware that it was a question.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Shall we leave it there, I think?
Yeah, let's keep it there. Keep this on nice and short. But as you know, guys, we're going to continue this journey and just keep exploring this. And this is all really pointing to becoming lighter, becoming freer. This whole process that James walked us through is to process emotion, to feel emotion. And that's the whole point of it, really, to process it, to let it go, to release it.
Because it will hold us back otherwise, right? If we are trying to get a new job, or if we're trying to make sales, we're trying to grow our business, if we're turning away opportunities, if we're not asking for the girl's number, if we're not, I don't know, having kids, whatever these life things are, right? Emotions will be coming up, like, and we'll have these stories of why I can't do it. I'm not good enough, or I can't do that, or I'll never get that, or I don't think it's going to work. And this is where you can go, right, okay, what's the emotion? And you can take that time with yourself, because fear holds a lot of people back. For example, fear is a huge one. Sadness, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of getting it wrong, fear of being made to look stupid, fear of judgment, all of this stuff, right? Which a lot of people know they've got, but they don't know how to process it and how to work through it. If you can dissolve that fear, well, then suddenly you might feel light enough to go, I'm going to do this, right? But
yeah. So I think one thing to know about us is we'll zoom in to the tools, to the strategies, and we'll teach you the practices, especially here within the community. And then it might be on the next session, we zoom right out, and we look at like some of we zoom right out again, so just for me, it's a macro and micro approach. I think that really helps. So the zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. So, because a lot of people, when you zoom out, they go, wow, that's all great, but how do you do it? And this is what today's session was a bit more around, the how to actually process, so yeah, that'll be the way we work. It'll be zooming in, zooming out, zoom, whatever way, zooming in, zooming out. And we'll keep repeating that over and over again with new tools, different strategies, different theories, different principles.
Yeah. And then on that note, there is obviously the Superhuman membership, which people can join as well. So, which would go deeper into everything. Essentially, it's like an ongoing, continual conversation of development in terms of everything. This conversation never ends, and the more you stay in it, the better life becomes. People sometimes, I don't know if people that are in this group will treat it this way, but I know a lot of people treat coaching as like, oh, I'm fixed now. And it's like, okay, you'll be back in a few months. Like, almost like people that go to the gym and then stop. It's like they build muscle and then they lose it, or they lose fat and then put it back on again. Like, one thing, the main theme for me in my whole life over the last 10, 11, 12 years is I just stay in the conversation. I'm always having some coaching, some therapy, learning, reading. My life gets worse without it, and it gets better with it. So just be in the conversation. But for anyone that wants to continue to be in this conversation because you've resonated so far and got value, then obviously there is the membership as well, which is like an ongoing thing, monthly thing. So
yeah, you'll be able to find a link to that somewhere in the community,
or ask.
Yeah.
They'll be here.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thanks for watching, guys. And any comments, any questions, just let us know, and we'll be more